Greetings viewers, Eric the Car Guy here, back again with another repair video for you. Behind me, production date of 11 of 97, which I believe makes it a 1998 Acura 3.2 TL that has a noise while the engine is running and the AC is on. Ooh. We'll get into the diagnosis and repair of that in this video. And just a little bit of trivia for you. How can you tell a 3.2 TL of this vintage from a 2.5 TL of this vintage without looking at the badge? Quite simply, all you got to do is look at the wheels. The 2.5 TL has the 5-cylinder engine and 4 lugs on each of the wheel. The 3.2 TL has 5 lugs on each of the wheels. Just a little bit of Acura trivia for you, if you're interested. I think one of the first things we'll do is we'll get underneath this hood and I'll see if I can get this noise to manifest for you so that you can hear it for yourself, or if you have a similar noise, this video could really help you out. I think this video will help you out just in general because my videos are fun to watch. I like watching them. You're watching them. Of course, you could stop watching it now, but don't, there's more to come. You can sort of hear the noise. I will get the camera down in there so you can hear it for yourself. Now it sounds like it's coming from this area. And I'm going to turn the AC on and off so you can hear how the noise changes. Now the fact that the noise changes when we turn the AC on and off, and yes, I do see that green stuff there, and I will mention that to the owner. Looks like a little bit of leakage from the radiator. What I believe the noise is coming from is the AC system. Now there's a pulley right here for the AC belt, but then the AC compressor is further down underneath right there. Many times I find it to be a problem with this idler pulley right here. So why don't we start by getting that idler pulley off of there and seeing if we can feel if that's where our noise is coming from. Okay, to remove this pulley right here is fairly simple. There is a 14mm nut on the front that you can't quite see. It's underneath this belt that you can loosen. I think a shorter ratchet would work better. I'm gonna go get one. Sometimes I like the long stuff for leverage, but sometimes short stuff works better. Once you've got that loose, then there's the 10mm adjuster, which is right here. And just turn that counterclockwise until the belt is loose. That should be enough. Now, remove that 14mm nut off of the front of the tensioner, and be careful because there's a washer, actually there's a couple of washers on the front of it that could fall off when you do this. Alright, the first thing I got was just the nut. The outer, sort of, I don't really want to call this a washer, it might even just be a dust cover. Beyond that is a big thick washer. So now that you've gotten those out, you can just reach down, lift the belt up a little bit, and you can just pull the tensioner, or the idler, right on up off of here. Now, I didn't get everything. There's still one more piece, like a little spacer that goes up through the middle of it. I'll show you how this whole thing is put together on the bench, which is where we'll head next. Okay, over here on the bench we can get a better view of how this whole thing is put together. This spacer goes on the back side, and this is what actually goes on to the assembly on the engine. Then there is this washer that goes in between here, and then this outer dust cover goes in here. The stud comes up through here, and that's where the nut gets tightened. Now, I had mentioned that many times if you have this noise, particularly when the AC is engaged, that many times it is this pulley assembly. But guess what? I'm not hearing anything. I'll get it close for you to hear. I mean, if this was the cause of the noise, I think it would be a lot more pronounced when you spin it, because it usually is. In fact, I have a bad one over here that I'll share with you. All right, well, this one's not as bad as I thought. In fact, this one is still pretty good. But sometimes you can just, when you turn it, you can feel it's got a little bit of roughness inside the bearing, and you can also hear them sometimes. But here's the trick. Here's the takeaway for you. You don't have to replace this whole unit. These bearings, you can buy them separately, and you can just replace the bearing. I believe this bearing is still good. In fact, these are both the same bearing. If you read the numbers off of these, that's one of the reasons why I had this out, just in case. You can just replace the bearings. And these numbers are printed right here on this orange part. And you can get those numbers, find that bearing somewhere. Maybe you can find it online or what have you. But you can just replace the bearing without having to replace this entire pulley, and that'll save you a considerable amount of money. I'll show you how to do that. You want to knock the bearing out from the back side. I usually do this on the vise and make sure that there's plenty of space for it to come through. This is a 16 millimeter socket. It just so happens to fit in there just so. Let me adjust you a little bit. And then you just take a hammer and knock it out. There you go. You can just replace the bad portion, which is this bearing. To reinstall, you just do the opposite of removal here. But be careful, because this is a bearing. You can damage it. So that means start out with gentle love taps. As you can see, the bearing is now fully bottomed out into the bottom of the assembly. Would be nice to put something in between when you hammer this in. That way you're not hammering directly on the bearing. Probably should have shown you that, but this is an old bearing off a used part, not really caring at this point. But now we have determined that this is not our problem. So let's go look and see if we could find the source of our problem. Suspect number 2 is something with the compressor itself. Given that's difficulty to access from up here, I'm going to raise the vehicle and gain access to it from underneath. That way we can get our hands on the compressor and see if we can figure out what's going on with that. Safety glasses, engage. For those of you that might be wondering, I put the jack stand under that support, and I left the floor jack in place also, so I actually have 2 supports while I'm hanging out under here. Looking up here, this is our AC compressor. Looks like with a couple of 10 millimeter bolts, we can pull down this plastic shielding here to gain access to it. For whatever reason, it looks like at one point it was rubbing through. Maybe it went off-roading or something and was running at the time and got that cut into it. But let's get this so we can get a better view of what we're looking at. There are a few fasteners here. One up under behind this wheel, another up under here, one here, and a couple of plastic clips. I'm just gonna take everything off to here and then flip this whole thing down and over. I don't need to remove the whole shield. Oh yeah, I forgot this one right here. That also needs to come off. These are all 10 millimeter, and yeah, I feared that this would happen, which it sometimes does. This one is just spinning on the inside here, and there is a way to get it off, but the only way is with an impact. You see there's a, okay, you can kind of see it in there. Right up through the aluminum, there is this little piece that this fastener goes into. What's happening here is, as I'm trying to loosen this, sorry, I keep getting in the way of my own light. As I'm trying to loosen this, the whole thing is spinning. So what I've done in the past to get past this is I'll take a pry bar or something and wedge it in to that back side of the fastener and just hit this with an impact, and that's what I'm about to show you. It's not easy, but it is possible. Real pain in the butt. All right, let's remove those other ones I told you about. To remove these plastic fasteners, there's like a Phillips head screw here that I just normally just take my pocket screwdriver and undo. Once you get that back far enough, you can just pull it right out. And that's what you get. This one is slightly damaged, unfortunately. But you wanna, when you go to reinsert this, make sure all of these are pushed together. And as you screw it in, those things spread apart and lock it into place. We should be able to pull this down now. All right, now we have our AC compressor exposed. I am reasonably certain that our noise involved the AC, since when we turned it on and off, the noise changed. And there it is. See the movement here on this pulley? You can also hear it. This is the source of our noise. Fairly certain. There is hope here. Many would think that, oh, we need a new AC compressor. Not true. This clutch assembly is sold separately, and you can just replace the clutch assembly instead of the entire compressor. In addition to that, you won't have to open any of the AC system in order to replace this part. So we're just going to replace this part, this AC pulley, and see what we have after that. All right, over on the bench here we have our new parts. This is a stator. It's an electromagnetic clutch, so to speak, and that when this coil inside of here is energized, it pulls this onto this assembly. So this is your pulley assembly, and this is the bearing, which I suspect is our faulty part on the compressor. There's a little bit of friction material in this area that, when magnetically activated, these two pieces are joined together and allows the pulley to spin. Otherwise, the pulley can spin freely when the magnetic clutch is not engaged. Now, looking at this is kind of a cheesy magnetic clutch, if I'm honest. I don't like having to replace electrical connectors. I'm sure it works fine. I don't have a lot of faith in it. However, that's not our problem. What our problem is, or what I believe to be our problem, is this bearing assembly. That being said, I say we just replace these parts and leave that guy out of the picture, because honestly I think the original equipment one is even better. Now what I will do is, this guy's a friend of mine, I'll give him this clutch to keep in his car, and if his compressor clutch ever fails, no big deal, I'll go back in, I'll replace this, I'll solder in the connector, and away we go. But today's issue is the noise, and that's what we're here to address. So I'm just going to replace these parts rather than messing with this cheesed up garbage. But first, I believe we're going to have to gain better access to our AC compressor, and I will show you how we'll do that. As you can see, the space here is very limited. I can barely get my finger up in between these two parts, and these are the parts that we need to remove from the compressor. That being said, it looks like there's just 4 fasteners that hold this onto the engine block. We'll remove those fasteners, the compressor will drop down, and when it does, I suspect we'll have enough room to work with it down in this area rather than trying to fight with it up in its current location. So we're removing these 4 fasteners. They have 12 millimeter heads to them. Since I already have the impact out, I'm going to use that. So that'll make things loud, but efficient. This is going to make things so much easier to deal with, and we didn't have to open the AC at all. There is a 10 millimeter bolt that holds this front part of the clutch assembly on. Now, when you remove that bolt, you need to be careful, because guess what? There may be a couple of very small washers that are going to come falling out. Those washers are very important. They're actually spacers, and they control the space between this outer part of the clutch and this pulley. That space is critically important to the operation of the clutch assembly. We don't want it to be too much or too little. It's been calibrated already. I believe it's supposed to be somewhere in the neighborhood of 45 thousandths. Given that they've already calibrated it, I am going to reuse the washers that will come out here. That I think is the best policy to get you as close as possible, but not a bad idea to come in here with a feeler gauge and measure when you're done. But to avoid issues, make sure that when they take this off, that those little washers don't get lost. Keep an eye out for them. There's my bolt. And those washers will not be here. They'll be on the back side after we remove this portion. You can already see some debris down in there. Okay. Now my washers, I believe, are still down in here. We'll get a look at those in a second, but let's get this out. I want to show you what I'm looking at here, which really leads me to believe that this bearing is definitely bad. See all that junk and debris? That says to me pretty much that bearing is probably toast. Now, there's one more step that we need to take, and right in there you can sort of see the outside of our snap ring. So we need a pair of snap ring pliers to finish the work here, and we need to open it up. So we need to have our snap ring or a set of snap ring pliers that open rather than pinch close. So we want them to open in order to remove this snap ring so we can get this off of here. I have a universal set of snap ring pliers here that work pretty well for jobs like this, as long as you can find the area to insert them. There we go. But there's a lot of debris in here. I think this car went off-road. This clutch was damaged as a result. That's my best guess. Here is our snap ring that's been removed. It wasn't damaged, it was just covered with so much dirt I couldn't find the holes. Now what should happen is I should be able to just pull this right off of here. There we go. Ta-da! Here we have our original equipment stator. And I'll show you why I'm not replacing it, because you can see how this one looks? Let me go grab the other one and show it to you. See, check it out. The quality of these two parts is just vastly different, in my opinion. Not to say that this wouldn't work, but I don't think it would work as well. Now, if you have a clutch that's not operating and you find that the coil has failed, this is how you would go about replacing it. There's one more snap ring down inside here holding that on. See that down in there? You remove that snap ring and this assembly will come off, and you have to undo the electrical connections up here. There's one ground that's fastened to the top of this, and then there's another electrical connection further up. I'm not doing that today because that's not the issue that I'm looking to address. But if you had to go there, that's what you would do. And you would probably check it with an ohm meter, or you could run direct power to it. All you've got to do is run power. It's already grounded from the outside, and it should engage the AC compressor clutch. But if the AC compressor clutch is not engaging when you add power to it, it's likely that this coil is bad. in which case you would replace this unit in addition to what I'm replacing now. We are just, as I said, going to replace this part. And here is our new part. Hopefully it slides down over. Yep, it does. All right. There is no movement here like there was on the other one. None at all. And it came with a new snap ring, so I'm just going to use my new snap ring. Actually, no, it did not come with a new snap ring. So I'm going to end up reusing this old one. That's unfortunate. I mean, it's not that this one's bad, it was just covered with dirt. The thing about snap rings is you have to make sure they're down in their grooves. If they're not doing their thing. There, hear that snap? Maybe that's why they call it a snap ring. Now I'm sure that my snap ring is secure. And as you can see, once again, there's not any movement, any noise. Well, there's a very slight movement, a very slight noise. Now let's take a look at those washers. Here's something that I'm seeing that adds credence to my theory of that bad bearing. See how this is like worn and shiny only on one side? That says to me that that part was not all straight, even, and wonderful. We know that's bad, but what we're looking for is right down in here. And to get it, we're going to tap it just like that, and hopefully they all came out. All right, I think we got them all. All right, here we have what came out, which was one big thick washer here. So that should be enough for our new part, which I'm going to drop down in there. Get it all straight and even so it fits in there properly. And that's what provides the clearance between this and the rest of the assembly. If it's not enough, we're going to add shims. If it's too much, we're going to take shims away. But I believe, like I said, the clearance between these two parts should be somewhere in the neighborhood of 45 thousandths. I'm going to take my new part knowing that there's a washer in there that I don't want to fall. This area in here is splined. It's splined directly to the, I guess you'd call it the crankshaft of the compressor. Should just slide over like that. I do have a new bolt, which I'll use. And I am going to run it down with an impact, but I'm going to turn it down quite a bit just so that I can knock it into place. Okay, I tried to look up the spec for the clearance in here. I could not find it, but I'm going to say that if you put the shims in that you took out, you should be fine. But I believe the clearance in here, and I wish I had an actual spec for you, was 45 thousandths. Now we just need to reattach this compressor to the block, hook up our belt, and we'll be on our way. And be careful not to cross thread these, because I gotta tell you, having the weight of this compressor on here can make that very easy. Now we can bring our belt back down, put it on there. Let's go up top, put that pulley back on, and test it out. All right, I'm gonna reinstall the pulley. Remember, that piece goes in the back first, and that's the front. Washer, then dust cover, and the outer retaining nut. Now I'm just going to run this down finger tight, and then I'm going to set the belt tension, which you don't want to go too tight because you'll kill the bearing. That's actually why most of those bearings on that idler / tensioner go bad, is because of over tightening, mostly after like a timing belt install or something. You want it tight, but not too tight. And that's really hard to show you on camera. But the word that is often used is banjo tight. So you don't want it so loose that you get a squealing belt on startup or during AC application. But you also don't want to get it so tight that you put so much strain on the bearings that the bearings get stressed and can possibly get damaged. And also know that Once you set it without the nut tightened, it's going to get tighter after you tighten the nut. So in other words, you want to leave it slightly loose to start with as you set this part, and then after you tighten the nut, know that it's going to tighten up just a little bit more. So if it's to the point where you're like, oh, that's tight enough, back it off a little bit and then then tighten the nut and then recheck it. Here's the deflection that I have now. I don't know how well you can see that. That's the deflection that I have now before tightening the nut. Now check the deflection. See, it's considerably less, but that's about the deflection that you want in this area, and that should be good. Let's start it up and see if our noise is still there.
Clutch is engaged and I don't hear any noise. I'm going to call this fixed.
Okay, I still need to put that splash shield back up underneath there and lower the vehicle, but I consider it done. I don't need to show you all that. I showed you how it came apart. This one I think was damaged due to something. I mean, that little slot that was cut into that lower splash shield led me to believe that it was damaged in some way. The danger is that maybe the compressor shaft got bent or something like that. That could spell more trouble, but for now, there doesn't seem to be any noise or issues, so I'm just gonna leave sleeping dogs lie, move on with my life. Should you have a compressor clutch failure, same operation. So you got to see the double whammy. But most of the time when you've got a noise like this and it's the AC and it's either on one of these 3.2 TLs or on the Acura Legends, the older Acura Legends also had issues like this, going all the way back to like the first ones, like 92-ish or something like that. That's where you'll find this. So if you're in that position, I would go for that tensioner first before I did anything else, and you should that should solve the problem for you. And also remember, you only have to swap out the bearing, not the whole pulley assembly. Look around for one of those bearings rather than trying to replace that entire pulley. Anyway, I am Eric the Car Guy, and you know what? If you got automotive questions, and I know some of you do, head on over to EricTheCarGuy.com. I've done what I can to make it easy for you. I've put a bunch of categories up there pertaining to the most commonly asked questions that I get, written articles on them, compiled them with videos that I've made on those topics, stuck the whole thing together in a nice, neat little searchable package that makes it easier for you to find answers to your automotive questions. That would be the first place I would go. If you don't find your answer there, feel free to sign up for our forum. It is absolutely free. All you need is an email address. Just be sure to respond to the confirmation email that should end up in your inbox. If you don't find it there, look in your spam folder, bulk folder, what have you. You can also connect with me socially on Google+, Facebook, and Twitter, and I close each of my videos with, be safe, have fun, and of course, stay dirty. Hey, I'll see you next time.